A gute Woche, a freiliche Woche. This week is the birthday of both the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe on the 18th of Elul. And the Baal Shem Tov taught that when one Jew inspires another Jew to reach out to a third Jew, to bring them back to Hashem, so the question is, who gets the merit? If I inspire someone, I know that there's someone who won't really react if I reach out to them directly. But if I call someone else and ask them to reach out to this person, that person will be successful in inspiring this person to come closer to Hashem. Who has the merit? Do I have the merit because I called this person? Or does the guy who actually made the phone call to or reached out to the other person, does he get the merit? Because he was the one who actually brought him closer to Hashem. Who is the one who has the merit? So to answer this question, the Baal Shem Tov mentioned that it says in the Mishnah, if two people are holding on to a talus and they're arguing, who does the talus belong to? They come to a court and the Jewish court asks each person who does the talus belong to, and each person says it belongs to me. So the halacha, the Jewish law says, is that the talus is divided. They divide the talus in half. So Baal Shem Tov says so too. If Reuven reaches out to Shimon to inspire Levi, Reuven asks Shimon to help Levi to come closer to Hashem, and Reuven and Shimon split the mitzvah. They both get his chus. It's not only the merit of Reuven or the merit of Shimon. The merit is divided. They both participated, and therefore the merit is shared. So tonight I want to share with you a very powerful story about someone who reached out to another Jew to bring him closer to Hashem. And I think it's very apropos to this time of the year, the month of Elul, where we are empowered by Hashem to be all the way, to reveal the Mashiach within us, the spark of Mashiach within us, and to live in a whole new level. So I want to share with you a very powerful story about this, about a very deep soul. In order to appreciate the context of the story, I want to preface the story with another story. A story about Rabbi Mordechai Kanelsky, one of the Rebbe's emissaries in New Jersey, who had the merit of helping hundreds and thousands of people to receive a circumcision, Jews who had immigrated from Russia and have never had the circumcision. He had the schus in helping many of them receive a circumcision. So he grew up in Soviet Russia in the hard times, and when he was 7 years old, his father didn't want to send him to the KGB schools. These were schools that really tried to destroy every vestige of faith in a child. He said that his mother-in-law, when she was a child, in growing up in one of these schools, the teacher once got up and said to the children, "Hey, do you see the blackboard? Do you see the eraser?" And I was like, "Yeah, we see it. Do you see God?" And the kids are like, "No." And the teacher says, "That's because there is no God." His little girl says in front of the whole class, "Hey guys, do you see the board? Yes. Do you see the teacher's brain? No, because the teacher does not have any intelligence." And everyone laughed, and it was very funny at the time. But this child paid for it a lot, but she was rewarded as well. Every one of her children became rabbis and rebbitzins helping Jewish people. So anyway, so this Mordechai, he grew up, and his parents didn't want to send him to these schools, of course. And when he was 7 years old, his father called over a doctor of his, a friend of his who was a doctor, and he offered him a lot of money, and he said to him, "Please give me a letter that says that my son Mordechai, is unable to go to school." So he gives him the letter, and Baruch Hashem, the letter says he's not well, he can't go to school, so he's exempt from going to school. But the next year, when he turned 8 years old, the doctor says, "Even if you give me a chamadan, if you give me a whole suitcase full of money, I can't write the letter, I'm going to get in trouble." So Muttl's father said to Muttle, "We don't have much choices here. You can't go to school. There's two options. One option is that you go into the basement. The basement in Russian is called pogry. Pogry is not like a American basement. It's a cellar, a cold cellar where you store potatoes. Cold, dank, dark, wet cellar, a boiler room. That's where you could live there. You never could see the light of day. That's one option. Or we could wrap you in a bandages and he chose to go into the cellar. And his father said, you have to stay there until we leave Russia. When will they leave Russia? Nobody knows. And so, because his son said, I'll go, Dad, I'll go in the pugry, but on one condition. I want you to get me someone to teach me Torah. Have someone teach me Torah. His father got someone to teach him Torah, and he taught him Torah himself. And every day, this little boy would memorize 2 lines of Tanya. And at nighttime, it was a little safer. He would come out of his pugry, out of the cellar. He'd walk out into the courtyard of his grandfather, who lived next door, get some fresh air just for a few minutes every day. He would walk around and repeat the words of Tanya in the air to purify the air, purify the world, as it says in Chassidus, that wherever you go, you say words of Torah, it purifies the air. So he did his part in purifying the world by saying those 2 lines of Tanya in his few minutes out of his cellar. And on Shabbos, he reviewed 12 lines of Tanya. Of those 12 lines, he learned throughout the week. Anyways, so you can imagine the father was very distraught having a son in Pugri every day. So his father one day decided to do the following: took a picture of himself, his wife, and his son, Matul, and his son, Avram, and he sent the letter to New York. Now, sending a letter from America, from Russia, from the Kanelskis to the Schneersons, would basically be an invitation to ask the KGB to arrest them. So instead of sending it directly to the Rebbe, he used a code, as very common in Hasidim. Those days, they would refer to the Rebbe in code. They would call the Rebbe grandfather. And he sent the picture to his cousins, the Minkowitzes in Crown Heights, and he wrote, "Dear cousins, please give this picture to grandfather. We really, really want to see him. We really want to see grandfather. Father, can you please give him this letter?" So months go by. After 3 months, a letter comes back from the Minkowitzes, and the letter says, "We gave your letter to grandfather, and grandfather didn't say anything." Now, his father, Muttl's father, he said, "My father was a very strong man, but when he heard this, it broke him completely. He cried like he never saw him cry. The Rebbe didn't give him a blessing. What does that mean? Are they stuck there forever? What the Rebbe didn't give a blessing? What's going on?" And he said that he was so broken, so distraught, and he really had nowhere to turn. At that time, there was a census. They were going around from house to house, taking a census of everyone living in this city. And when they came to his house, the officer asked, "Who lives here?" He asked his mother, "Who lives here?" She said, "Me, my husband, and our son Avram." So the KGB officer says, "And what about your son Matul?" She said, "Matul went to Samarkand. Matul is not here. He went to Samarkand. He's there, and his relatives and school." "Oh, really?" So the officer asked to come inside. They weren't, and they searched through the whole house. They searched like they searched for chametz. They searched everywhere, but miraculously, they did not search under the dining room table. They didn't search in the dining room table. There was a carpet. On the carpet, there was a door to the cellar. They didn't search there, miraculously, which is where Matal was. Anyways, this was in 1969. But in 1970, they got a visa. They're able to leave Russia. And in those days, after the Six-Day War, and Sorry about that. Some technical difficulties there. Apologize for that. Okay, hopefully it'll work now. So one day, Motel's father procured a ticket to go to America. And his wife asked him, how'd you get the money for a ticket? He said, every day I didn't eat dinner. And I put away $1 every day. And eventually enough money to buy a ticket. So his wife said, so you're going to go to the Rebbe? What about our son Motel, who was for a year and a half in Pugri, a year and a half in the cellar? Doesn't he also deserve to go to the Rebbe? So she said to take one of her diamond rings, bracelets, one of her pieces of jewelry, to sell it. And with that, she sent her son Motel to go to the Rebbe. When they came to the Rebbe, they first went to the Minkowitz's home. At the Minkowitz's home, he wanted to know, first of all, whatever happened with that letter they got. He sent a letter to them, asking them to tell grandfather they wanted to see him. What happened? Well, where did that picture go? So Rav Minkowitz says, I could tell you, but first we got to say l'chaim. They sat together and they said l'chaim. They said to him like this: when your picture came, it was before Yom Kippur, and I brought your picture to the Rebbe. The Rebbe was giving out honey cake, and it was my turn. I gave the Rebbe your picture and asked the Rebbe for a bracha that you and your family should leave Russia. The Rebbe took the picture. He didn't say anything, but he went into his room. He stopped the distribution of the honey cake, went into his room, and he put the picture in his drawer of his desk. And he continued and distributed the honey cake. That was in Tafshin Kavtes in 1969. Tafshin Lamed, 1970, I went again past the Rebbe for the honey cake. And this time, the Rebbe stopped again, went to his room, went into the drawer of his desk, took out the picture, and gave it back. And the Rebbe said, I don't need this picture anymore. Apparently, the Rebbe was davening for them every day, and somehow that was connected to having the picture. And then the Rebbe said, it's done already, in other words. You could have the picture back. So when the Kanelskis came to see the Rebbe spoke to his father in Russian, about Russia. And then he said to Motel, little boy, he says, how many tzitzis do you have? He says, I have 4 corners. I have 4 tzitzis in all 4 corners of my garment. So the Rebbe said, how many strings are there in each corner? He says, 8. The Rebbe says, so how many are there altogether? He says, 32. So the Rebbe says, what's 32? So he turns to his dad. Dad, what is he asking me? And his father gave him a look like, I'm not speaking in front of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said 32 is equal to the word leiv. Leiv means heart. The Rebbe blessed him. The Rebbe said, by wearing tzitzis, it gives you a blessing to have a Jewish heart, a warm heart, a Hasidic heart. That's what the Rebbe said. And then the Rebbe asked his father, how did you leave Russia? So he told the Rebbe that there was a very senior officer that they heard accepts bribes. They got some money together. They sent him some money. And then Ovir, the agency that provides the visas to leave and the passports to leave Russia, they sent him the visa right after he gave the money. And the Rebbe said with a smile, and you think it helped? Sounding like you may think that's how it worked, but really the reason why that worked or anything worked is because Hashem made it happen, not because of the money. But he didn't get it. He said, yeah, it worked. Never said, and you really think it worked? And then he got it. Then he got it. So that was basically hinting to the fact that the reason why they had come and they left Russia was because the Rebbe had prayed for them. And that was the story I wanted to share with you, just to give some context of the story I wanted to share, which is about little Yehuda. Let's begin the story this way. This story is printed in the Baruch Chabad magazine. It's 3:00 in the morning in England, and Shmuel Lu is getting a phone call. On the line, the person says, it's from Moscow. It's the Alter Rebbe's brother. If you recognize my voice, don't say my name. But Rabbi Lewis had to jog his memory. Who is the Alter Rebbe's brother? What was his name? This was obviously a code. He realized who it was. This was little Yehuda. There is in Russia at that time, in 1984, there were two Hasidim among the many Hasidim in Russia that were they were involved in activities of teaching Torah underground. There was the big Yehuda, and there was little Yehuda. Little Yehuda was 23 years old, and he had a question for Rabbi Lu. He had just learned that the Rebbe said that everyone should say the verse Ach Tzadikim at the end of prayers, and before praying they should say, I accept upon myself the mitzvah, love your fellow like yourself. So he wanted to know, and this was not just to know, it was dangerous to make this phone call, right? He said, if you recognize my name, don't say my name. I'm the Alter Rebbe's brother. Alter Rebbe had a brother named Yehuda Leib who's hinting that's my name. If you recognize me, don't say it. I want to know the Rebbe's instruction. Is that just for Hasidim, or should we publicize it to others? That was his question. So who was this Yehuda? Who was this little Yehuda? He was 23 years old, and he was one of the head activists in among the Hasidim in Russia. He was involved in everything that went on in Russia. He was one of the people who merited to find manuscripts of Hasidic discourses that were never before discovered. Like in Russia, they had some Hasidim had manuscripts of Hasidus that no one knew about, and he sent them to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe kept it, and the Rebbe wrote on the manuscript. I got this from Yehuda ben Zalman. And he was very, 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 very devoted. He was, in a very short amount of time, after the 6-Day War, a lot of Jews in Russia became very close to their roots. They saw the miracles of the 6-Day War, and they wanted to become closer to Hashem. And this led Yehuda to meet Geshe Velenkin, who was really the head of the underground activity of Geshe Velensky. He was in charge of the underground activity of the Hasidim in Russia, and so this Yehuda, because he came close to Geshe, he became himself a Chassid. He was a genius. He learned a lot of Torah, revealed parts of Torah, hidden amounts of Torah, and he became an incredible genius in Torah at a very, very short amount of time. And he also was gifted in writing things in code. And because he wrote things in code, he was able to transmit messages to the Rebbe and get messages from the Rebbe to give to Hasidim. And so I want to share with you what happened to Yehuda. Yehuda was, there's so many people that went to Russia to bring things to people in Russia, like Sidurim and various missions to the Rebbe. And all of them wrote in their notes to the Rebbe, and we met little Yehuda. And this is what little Yehuda told us. This is what we did with Yehuda. He was very central to all that was going on through the Hasidim in Russia. And we can go on and on, talk about different things that he did then. There could be books about this little Yehuda. But tonight I want to talk to you about what happened to Yehuda himself. So after this video was put out about, Jen put out this video about how he called middle of the night to Shmuel Lu to ask him if this was instruction just for Hasidim, or as it really is, it's instruction for everyone. That everyone should say before they pray, and the Rebbe spoke about how this is something that brings protection to the world by saying, I accept upon myself the mitzvah of your fellow like yourself before praying, and saying Ach Tzadikim at the end of praying. It brings tranquility and blessing to the world. So after this video came out, there was a boy, whose name is Moshe Kleinberg, who grew up in Russia, and his father grew up also in Russia during the hard times. And his grandfather, Shaya Kleinberg, was one of the top activists in Moscow during the time of the real hard times of much earlier on, times of Stalin and after, where things were really, really difficult. Chassidim were arrested left and right, put in prison. So he has a long connection to sacrifice of Torah mitzvahs in Russia. And he heard this story that Shmuel Lu shared on this video, and he really was curious what happened to Yehuda. So he asked his father, Baruch, what happened? What happened to Yehuda? I heard about this guy, Yehuda. I saw the video on Shem. Who is this guy? Where is he today? His father's like, better don't ask. It's a bitter story. What happened was, this Yehuda grew up in 1961, and his parents were very communist. And after he became close to Hasidim, we can go on and on about different things that happened. Just to mention one detail. One of the people that the Rebbe sent often to Russia was Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Levi, who started the OK kosher. OK kosher Rabbi Beryl Levi would go often to Russia because he was in charge of making many. He was allowed to go to Russia often because of his position as of establishing various kosher plants in Russia. So he would bring to the Rebbe videos of Hasidim in Russia, speaking to the Rebbe, took a video, and people would just speak to the Rebbe, and he would bring the video back to the Rebbe. The Rebbe often cried when he saw these videos. Anyway, so Rabbi Levi calls him up one day, and he says, "What are you guys doing?" And he starts telling him what happened at the Rebbe's Farbrengen. The Rebbe just gave a Tanya's, and it was 1980, it was 1982. The Rebbe just gave out Tanya's. And what are you guys doing? Is we're having a Farbrengen. A Farbrengen? Why are you having a Farbrengen? He said it's the 13th of Nisan, the anniversary of the passing of Tzemach Tzedek. So we, meaning him and just two guys, him and Getcha, we're having a Farbrengen together. So the next day, the Rebbe spoke about how you should Farbrengen on the 13th of Nisan. They said in Russia they're Farbrengen. In Russia they're Farbrengen together on the 13th of Nisan. More so, we should Farbrengen. The Hasidim, it's a very hard time to Farbrengen before Pesach. So many things I have to do. So we should learn from the Hasidim in Russia. They're Farbrengen. Who is Farbrengen? There's two guys, Yehuda and Getcha. And so that's the kind of person he was. So what happened was that there was something that cooled him off from his connection to Hasidus and to the Rebbe. What happened was different versions, exactly what happened. He was a very sensitive person. And he, someone had basically suspected him, according to one version, of tipping off the KGB, which was very common. Many people who were very religious, they were informers for the KGB because the KGB would go over to a person and they would say, "Hey, you tell us where other Jews are learning Torah or else we're going to arrest you." So he was suspect of that, and he felt that people were suspicious of him of being an informer. That's one version of the story, or could it have been just jealousy because he was such a senior, respected chassid. Whenever someone is respected, people are jealous. Either way, something happened, and his after his grandfather passed away, he had to live with his parents. His parents did not support the fact that he became religious, and so he detached himself from all of his activity. After he was insulted, and plus he had to live with his parents, so everyone felt very bad. But that's what happened, and no one stayed in touch with him. So this boy, he heard this whole story, and he was he's very bothered by this. We have to do something for this guy, Yehuda. Yehuda's a special guy. We should reach out to him. This is 40 years ago, 1984, when he was 23, and he was so involved. But 40 years, no one's heard of him. But he's like, no, we have to reach out to him. And Moshe's brother, Mendel, got married in 2023. And so his young brother decided, as many people do for the wedding, to put out a little memento, a little booklet. And in the booklet, he put out a whole section of this little booklet was about reports people gave to the Rebbe. And among the various reports, everyone was always mentioning, and Yehuda did this, and Yehuda said this, and Yehuda helped us with this. And so this Moshe, after he put out this little memento booklet, he went to studying yeshiva in Nyack, and the mentor of the yeshiva, Rabbi Gurari, also traveled to Russia when he was younger. And this Moshe asked him, Rabbi Gurari, do you remember Yehuda? He says, yes. Where is Yehuda today? What's happened with him? And And so he heard what happened. He was very, very upset. And so they decided to start to search for him, to try to find out where he was. And they did some search on the internet, and they found his address. His address is in New Jersey, and no one had ever, yes? Oh. There were people that had some kind of connection with him, had reached out to him, but um, but there was no real connection with anyone. People had reached out. So what happened to him? Well, how would he respond if a chassid would reach out to him? How would he feel today, 40 years later, if someone would reach out to him? Obviously, something happened. Obviously, his Yiddishkeit, his Torah mitzvahs had decayed. What would he feel like if someone reached out to him? So Rabbi Chaim Tzvi Groner from Australia, um, he he sent an email to Yehuda, and the response to the email left no room for question. The response was, whatever happened in the past was in the past. I don't want a connection anymore. That's what Yehuda wrote back. But Moshe Kleinberg was stubborn. He's like, no matter what, we're going to reach out. And he sent in the mail the booklet that he collected all the various notes of the various chassidim of what they had done in Russia. He sent this booklet to Yehuda, and he wrote him a letter in Russian, and he sent the letter in the mail to where he lives today in New Jersey, where he lived in New Jersey, and he left his email his email address in the physical package they sent him. A day went by, a week went by, no response. A month, 2 months go by, 3 months, no response. But he didn't give up. Before Pesach, he sent him shmura matzah for Pesach. And finally, Yehuda responded. Yehuda responded and said to him, he wrote back to him, I remember your grandfather. Your grandfather was a true deep chassid. But he said again in the letter, he said, my connection with Lubavitch was something in the past. And that's what he wrote, but there was still some light at the end of the tunnel. He responded. There's some kind of connection. He thanked him for the booklet he sent. But Moshe had a lot of questions. He wanted to know. He wanted to know what was like in Russia in those days. Who were these Hasidim? So he kept on writing letters to him and questions to him. And before Shoshana in 2024, Tafshin Pei Daled, it's actually still 2023, there was something unusual. Yehuda finally, he wrote in his letter back to him, signed Little Yehuda, the name that he used in Russia. Moshe Kleinberg told Rabbi Groner from Australia that Yehuda responded. Rabbi Groner was like, you have to go visit him. Go visit him on Hanukkah. So Moshe like, how should I visit him? So Rabbi Groner is like, you should get involved in the Hanukkah campaign in one of the nearby Chabad centers in New Jersey, and tell him you're in town anyways. You want to go visit him, and Moshe decided to bring him a gift, but as his spiritual mentor advised, don't bring him a gift that has any connection to Judaism. Just give him a gift that he could use. That will remember you. So he sent him an email. Hey, I'm going to be in New Jersey anyways. Can I stop by and visit you? And Yehuda said, I don't want to. It's not a good time right now. I'm ill. I'm very ill. I can't meet you. But he agreed that he could leave something for him by the door. So he left by the door. He left him this gift. He bought him this clock, and Yehuda wasn't exactly being so honest with him. He did get, unfortunately, the illness that we do not customarily say that starts with a C. But he had already recuperated from the illness. But he sent him that he brought him the gift, and he asked Yehuda in the email, what is your Hebrew name? Yehuda ben Yente. He knew his name because that was the name that everyone used in the reports that they gave to the Rebbe. He said, yes, that's my name. He said, okay, I'm going to pray for you. And when he got when he saw the present, and And the little note that he left in Russian, I wish you to have a speedy recovery. Yehuda wrote back, I thank you, me'umko de liba, me'umko de nafshe. I thank you from the depth of my heart, depth of my soul. So he didn't get to meet Yehuda, but he went back to study in 770. He was hoping to meet him. It was a little disappointing, but he gave him that gift and it touched him. So this began a whole series of interactions between him and Yehuda about things going on in those days. Among other things, just one interesting diamond of a story that was not publicized before the Yehuda shared with him. He said that in Simchas Torah in 1984, the Rebbe sent a message before Simchas Torah that all the Hasidim should not go to the regular shul in Russia, in Moscow, which is called the Marina Rosh Shul. They should go to another shul called the Shul Arkifoba. Arkifoba is a street in Russia, in Moscow, and there's a shul in Arkifoba. That's the shul they should go to for Simchas Torah. And not everyone got that announcement. Of course, it wasn't like today WhatsApp. The Rebbe said, it's hard to pass information. So most of the Hasidim listened because they got the information, but some didn't. And everyone went to the shul. In Marina Rush, to the regular shul, including Yehuda, they were interrogated. Everyone else was freed shortly, except for him. And they put him together with the worst criminals, and they freed him on condition that he stops his activities. And so a lot to say about what he had done in Russia. He one of the various missions he was given was to locate the grave of Rab Mordechai Dubin. So he started pouring out like water, all different kinds of memories that he had from those days, from his missions that the Rebbe had given him in that time. During in Adar in 2024, Yehuda sent an email with the following painful news. It says they've discovered the illness in me the fifth time, and Rabbi Moshe Kleinberg sent back to him a letter saying to him, in your merit, I decided to add in Torah and in prayer and in kindness, and I'm doing all these things in your merit, and I'm praying for you, I'm going to go to the oil for you. And Yehuda sent him a letter right before Purim saying that he's starting chemo, and he said, I would appreciate if you could find for me the videos of Rabbi Levi that he brought to the Rebbe. I would appreciate get the full videos. So meanwhile, he was put in the hospital, and Moshe decided on his own he's going to go visit the hospital and bring him a Megillah, read the Megillah for him. But by the time he got to the hospital, Yehuda already was freed from the hospital and went home. He went to his house. He didn't tell him he was going to go to his house. He just went to his house. He brought him a big shachmanis, and he rang the bell, and he felt like he ruined everything because it was a very sensitive connection. And so when he got to the house, Yehuda didn't want to see him. His wife answered the door. He can't see you. And he brought him this big shachmanis, and he thought he ruined everything, but because Yehuda didn't respond. But a little while later, he did respond again. Thank you for the shachmanis. I'm very sick. I can't. Moshe said, why don't we go together to the Rebbe's ohel? You're not so far away. Let's go to the ohel. I'm too sick. You don't understand. Not so simple. At that time, in 2024, in the month of Nisan, a letter came out that the Rebbe had sent to Professor Branover, Langesund. In this letter, the Rebbe had said this letter was sent in originally in 1984, in the month of Tammuz, but it wasn't publicized till 2024. And the letter was about starting a yeshiva in Moscow, a yeshiva that was going to be public knowledge under the KGB, under Russia at the time. Should we start a yeshiva? And the Rebbe mentions Little Yehuda in the letter, and the Rebbe said that that this idea should be done under three conditions, whatever it was. And the Rebbe said, don't publicize this response, only tell people who need to know. So this response never reached Yehuda even, never got this information. And he just got this now in 2024. He got this letter there about him that he should start a yeshiva. And he wrote back to Moshe, he said, this is the greatest merit in my that someone could have in my past life. He still was like resistant to connect it. He said, this is the greatest merit someone could have in my past life. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. But anyways, his situation got worse. Moshe Kleinberg decided, based on the advice he got from his spiritual mentor, it's time to reach out to him directly about Torah mitzvahs. So he sent him a letter and he said, I want you, 5 minutes. I want you to check your mezuzahs if they haven't been checked. And I want you to get you tefillin if you don't have tefillin. This was the first time he had written to him. I'm sorry for writing to you about Torah mitzvahs. Like, realized it was very sensitive. But I want you to tell me how mezuzahs you need, if you need mezuzahs. So he wrote back, I need 5 mezuzahs. I have tefillin. I need to find them. I have Rashi, I have Rabbeinu Tam, I need to find them. And he said, I want to get them checked. And so they agreed to meet in a nearby Chabad center that was run by Yaakov couple Chaitin. And this Moshe Kleinberg was very excited. He got 5 mezuzahs for him, and he went to the house to meet him, finally meet Yehuda. Door rings, he opens the door, and there is Yehuda, very emotional, very excited. His dream is starting to be fulfilled. He's got to meet Yehuda, finally. And Yehuda gave him his tefillin. The tefillin that he had actually belonged to the same Rabbi Nosson Garari from Buffalo. When he had gone to Russia years before, he had given Yehuda his own tefillin, because he'd get tefillin himself, and he goes back to America, he gave him his own tefillin. The tefillin had a little musty, like basement smell. And interesting caveat, Rabbi Chaitin's wife's uncle is the same Rabbi Garari. So these tefillin come around. The Nosson Garari gave me this tefillin. Oh, that's my uncle. Anyways, and he put on the tefillin. He said, I put them on. I need to just learn how to put them on again. I put them on for many years, but I forgot. He showed him, and he put on the tefillin, and he said Shema Yisrael, and Moshe said, I never saw anyone say Shema Yisrael the way he said Shema Yisrael, like the real way Hasidim used to say Shema, the authentic way, word by word, with a whole heart, pouring out his soul like water. And when he finished davening, he accepted mezuzahs, and he sent an email later. He wants to meet to pick up the tefillin and to get a siddur. Now, in the summer of 2024, Yehuda's soul was kindled. He wasn't so old, but the illness really got to him. He sent a letter to Rabbi Chaitin, I want to learn Chassidus with you. I want to set time to learn Chassidus with you. And he asked Moshe, what else should I say in my prayers? He said, I should say your Tehillim for your age, should say the Rebbe's Tehillim. And he asked him if he would want to go to the Ohel. He said, I can't go to the Ohel. Is it possible to send a letter to the Rebbe by email? He says, yes. I'm going to share with you what Yehuda wrote. Yehuda wrote a good davach. After I pass away, please get in touch with my wife about Kaddish. He said, I'm unfortunately, my treatments cost a lot of money, and I can't really pay so much for Kaddish, but I still want you to make sure that someone says Kaddish for me. So he wrote back to Yehuda, I will do this, don't worry, but I think we should go to the Ohel. Yehuda said, I really can't go to the Ohel, but I wanted to give you a letter to send to the Rebbe. This is what he wrote. I daven. I say the morning blessings. I put on tefillin 6 days a week. I put on a talis cotton, talis gadol. I put on a tzitzis, and I wear a talis. Every day, I start my day with Moida Ani. At first, he said, I forgot how you're supposed to say Tehillim for your age. You're supposed to say a year older than you are. So if you're 60, he was 63. You should have said 64, but he's saying 63. He said, I didn't stop. Even though I found out I'm supposed to say 64, I still say 63 because I want to say Tzamach al Nafshi, the tune the Rebbe taught. So, and then he wrote, a message, a pidyon nefesh, a letter to the Rebbe. He wrote, "My dear Rebbe, the Rebbe that I left almost 40 years ago, and now I have the temerity to say that I found again. I am the little Yehuda from Moscow." And he asked for a bracha that his pain should have less pain and then be healed. And that's the and he passed away shortly afterwards. He passed away as a chassid. He passed away kindling that spark that he had this whole entire time. So I wanted to share the story in this month of Elul to I think the story is a story that we all can relate to. In different ways. We think we're not connected anymore. We can't do things we did before because we're not the same. And this story brings out, this Moshe Kleinberg, very amazing how with his sensitivity, step by step, slow, believing in him, and writing to him, and being kind to him, he brought out his neshama, and thank God, passed away unfortunately a year ago on the 28th of Av. His yard site was just a few weeks ago, his first yard site. Or the Rebbe said we shouldn't say the first yard site because Mashiach is coming, there won't be any more yard sites after Mashiach comes. But the bottom line is, you have to realize who we are and what we are, and we're all welcome home. King is in the field, and we should ask the King in the field to not just accept us as he does with a beautiful and smiling face, but accept our request. The coming Mashiach to King no B'Karav Mamash. A good Tavach and a freiliche Vach, Reb David.